Hello, today I'd like to share some research I've been working on for the Communication Association of Eurasian Researchers. This work is titled The Myth Makes the Manichaean Narrative. This research looks at how state-controlled media in both Soviet and modern Russia used mythological frameworks to transform political actions into historical imperatives. The Soviet Pravda in 1941 and Russian Channel 1 in 2022 employed similar narrative structures, portraying enemies as eternal threats and more. This Manichaean narrative, a dual-natured narrative, casts one side of a conflict in dire terms. This method was used by the Soviets in World War II and now by Russians to justify their invasion of Ukraine. Modern-day Russian leaders want to frame the war as inevitable, the opposition of evil, making action a historical destiny, not political choice, and finally, framing conflicts as inevitable confrontations against perceived invaders. Ironically, these myths justify an obvious Russian invasion in the present-day situation. Russia's war in Ukraine is driven by narrative, not just logistics. The state portrays conflict as destiny, echoing Soviet-era myths. This narrative architecture frames Russia as morally bound to confront enemies, casting Ukrainian forces as modern fascists. The focus is on sustaining war through stories, not material means. Barth's myth theory reveals how myths transform history into, quote, common sense, making political actions seem natural. This Manichaean structure divides the world into good and evil, simplifying complex issues and elevating sacrifice. Russia's civilizational identity frames war, currently war with Ukraine, as perpetually, quote, defending civilization, making war feel morally necessary. While extreme force has been used by the Russian government to suppress dissent in Russia, another major way that they maintain consensus is through mythologizing. Thus, a major secondary battle emerges, occurring in the narrative domain. Mythic narratives shape perceptions of conflict. The Soviets referred to disputed territories as our sacred land, and Russia, in the present invasion of Ukraine, now says it is fighting for its historical Russian lands and other evocations of Ruski Mir. The sacred homeland myth frames territory as non-negotiable, while the eternal enemy myth justifies perpetual war. Comparing the Ukrainians to the German Nazis justifies their invasion. The idea of civilizational destiny portrays war as a historical duty, removing choice. The further the reality of the invasion of Ukraine can be taken into myth, the more support can be garnered, as it is no longer reality, but a mythic destiny. The unified people myth suppresses dissent through patriotic unity, and heroic sacrifice normalizes casualties, enabling endurance. These narratives create a powerful framework for understanding conflict and to shape opinion in the Russian world of national identity. Territory is identity. Soviet land was reclaimed by the people, while Channel 1 speaks of historic Russian lands. Nazi Germany, a true invader, and now as propaganda, modern Ukrainian forces, are labeled as eternal enemies, framing conflict as an unending struggle. War is destiny, not choice, and unity equates to patriotism, making dissent treasonous. The Soviet Union's civil religion replaced traditional religious symbols with political ones, making the nation sacred. In history books, you can find stories of when church bells were melted down to be remade into tractors and guns to serve the Soviet state. Today, Russian media uses religious imagery from the Orthodox Church to frame war as defending Holy Rus, blending cultural identity and orthodoxy. Patriarch Kirill's support sanctifies state actions, suggesting divine participation, elevating the invasion to a mythic holy war. This spiritualization makes war durable, as sacrifice becomes a moral offering and dissent profane. The narrative domain is crucial in framing war as a sacred historical struggle. This narrative domain is decisive in sustaining a war effort. Myths stabilize mobilization. They justify by making suffering virtuous, reinforcing identity narratives that strongly resist external messaging. To counteract the power of such myths, effective disruption must originate internally, reframing the myths to challenge coherence while preserving dignity, targeting belonging rather than belief. So how can we enter the narrative realm to counteract these powerful identity myths? One key method is to reframe myths by exposing their broken promises. Myths always promise something. They provide an image of the good they support. Show how these promises are empty, and you might work a crack in the facade. Focusing on the gap between heroic sacrifice and oligarchic privilege might be one key way to show the betrayal of first, the myth, and second, the reality. Highlight the injustice of elites who are exempt from sacrifice. Show the dead bodies. Show the vacation houses on the Black Sea. The contrast breaks the myth. Amplify internal voices like veterans and artists to reshape loyalty. Offer alternative identities from within cultural discourse to weaken mythic inevitability. For example, in Russian culture, bring up Tolstoy or Pushkin to highlight dissonance. Finally, desacralize narratives. Make it real, not mythic, shifting war from unquestionable destiny to simple choice, making it questionable. Russia's wartime narrative, deeply rooted in mythic frameworks, shapes national identity and justifies sacrifice. For better, possibly during the Great War, but now for worse, with its extreme gaslighting effect in the invasion of Ukraine. Yet these narratives are not immutable. By engaging within the narrative's symbolic architecture, we can reveal war as a choice, not destiny. Rewriting these stories allows for reimagined meanings and visible alternatives. Thank you for your attention.